Welcome back to a special Shark-tastic episode of Comic Watchers, brought to you by Comic Watch. Comic Watch is your source for all your comics and media news and reviews written by fans for fans. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Spread the word that we're coming for the clickbait sites. It's our time now. I'm your host, Cody, coming to you from my private tropical paradise in the Pacific. Brian had an unexpected work emergency, so we're joined by a very special guest this week, along with the rest of our usual gang. So welcome to Nicholas Osborne.
Thank you. I'm Nicholas Osborne, coming from Carthage, Texas. You'll probably notice the country slang, I guess. I'm an editor and reviewer at Comic Watch. You can follow me at Osborne Nicholas on Twitter and Instagram.
Awesome. And then you guys know these two knuckleheads.
Hey, it's me, John Jack. You know me. I'm in Seattle. It's hot today. That's neat. It's probably going to be hot for a while. It's almost summer. Isn't that cool? You can follow me at JohnBad2CJack on Twitter, and you can find me in my group For the Love of Comic Books on Facebook.
And this is Matt, coming to you from soggy Oklahoma City. We've been flooding the last couple days in these parts and having all kinds of fun tornadoes, but I'm safe. I'm dry. Didn't need to break out the oars to get to work yet. So, huzzah. You can follow me at The Uncanny Matt on Twitter.
All right. So we've got a pretty good show for you today. We've got 3 spotlight books, 2 pretty great ones, and 1 that is a comic book. So we're going to be covering Hawkman number 12 from DC, Captain America number 10 from Marvel, and Metal Shark Bro from Scout Comics. But with B gone, news falls to me this week. I apologize in advance, but I threw together some notes. I think this should be okay. So starting out on a sad note, the world lost beloved actor Peter Mayhew this past week. Mayhew, of course, was the actor who played Chewbacca in the Star Wars saga, and he'll be sorely missed by millions. He was 74 years old when he passed in his home in North Texas, as announced by his family a couple of days later. So rest in power, Peter Mayhew. We will be missed. In other Star Wars news, the timeline for the first post-Skywalker Star Wars trilogy was announced this week, with new films coming in 2020, 2022, and 2024. They also announced a bunch of Avatar movies. I don't care. In related news, the New Mutants film has been pushed back again, this time to April 2020, and Gambit has been completely removed from the upcoming schedule, shocking literally nobody. On more positive news, FX's
What's
Legion...
Channing Tatum going to do with his time?
I have no idea. I mean, I know he was very invested in this for the last 15 years or so. Movie was never going to happen. Nobody ever believed that. If you did, I have a bridge to sell you. FX's Legion will begin its 3rd and final season on June 24th. Of course, Legion follows David Haller, the son of Professor X and Gabrielle Haller, ultra powerful mutant. The series takes some liberties with the character. It's mind-blowing, David Lynchian, thought-provoking fun. Highly recommend it. If you haven't seen seasons 1 and 2, now is the time to binge them and get ready for the June 24th launch of season 3, which will be the final season. Prominent DC artist Patrick Gleason announced this week on Twitter that he has signed an exclusive contract with Marvel. I don't believe he mentioned, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, if he mentioned what any upcoming projects would be. He just threw up a big splash of a bunch of Marvel characters.
Amazing Spider-Man. He's gonna
he's done Amazing Spider-Man.
He's gonna be tag teaming with Ryan Otley every other arc on Amazing Spider-Man, replacing Humberto Ramos or the other one. You know the one, Scott Bakula.
Chris Bakula.
Chris.
Yeah, you know the one. Whatever.
Yes.
Whatever.
Chris
Leave me alone. Yeah. Chris Bakula, which I am really actually excited about because his style is much more complementary to Otley's than either of the other artists who have been tag teaming Otley have been. Actually, he's a little bit better than Otley, which is unfortunate.
He's been great on Superman, so it's going to be pretty awesome to see him on Spidey.
Young Justice, too.
Yeah.
And Gleason's been great for years on everything.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a great
Batman
artist.
and Robin, Green Lantern Corps.
Green Lantern Corps, yeah.
Yeah. That's a big win for Marvel, who have been criticized a lot lately, myself included, for not being willing to shell out money for top tier talent. Like they'd rather bring in, a person nobody's ever heard of to put on a book rather than actually pay somebody. So that's a big win for them. That's a game changer in the market. In other Marvel news, Marvel announced today a lineup of unknown comics coming from superstar creative teams in the near future, including some monstrous team-ups like Al Ewing and George Perez, Mark Waid and John Cassaday, and many, many more. I think Eric Larson's got a Spider-Man book in that lineup. So head on over to www.comic-watch.com to find out all of the creative teams that we can be expecting to see sometime in the near future. And any other news that I might have missed because I didn't read it all. There's a John Wick game. I saw that at the last second, but yeah. So more news to come.
Oh, Lion Forge and Oni are merging. That announced earlier today.
Oh yeah,
that was kind of the big story.
Yeah.
To become Comic You'll Never Read Enterprises.
This is good for, especially for Oni, right? Because I assumed the Lion Forge merger brings Gail Simone into their fold as well.
Definitely. She was the latest pickup from them, so big name talent at least.
For the Oniverse.
That's just kind of interesting because Oni's sort of been just languishing in the far reaches of comicdom for quite a while now after making an initially big splash around the turn of the century. So maybe this will help them return to a little bit of prominence.
They had an OGN come out last year about some kind of fat camp and a murder. It was pretty good. Lion Forge has like 2 books I like.
Yeah, I don't know.
Infinity 8's real good.
Fair enough. So Lion Forge and Oni merger. Check that out over at the website. So for our first spotlight book, is that it for news? Anybody else have any more news they want put out?
I think we're good.
Okay, cool. First spotlight book. I'm drawing names out of a hat. I'm going to start with Captain America number 10. This is from Ta-Nehisi Coates and Adam Kubert on art. Is that the right Kubert? Adam, right? Yes. 30 years of reading their books. Still can never remember which one is which. Joe always stood out.
It's not.
We got Frank.
Just a guy named Joe.
Rest in
Which
power,
was
Joe.
drawn by Steve Ditko.
That was a Ditko comic, fool.
I said that.
The colors were done by the legendary Frank Martin. Joe Caramanga on letters on this one. This is right smack in the middle. This is the 4th issue of a 6-issue story arc called Captain of Nothing. We find Steve has been imprisoned wrongfully for the murder of Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. And now this is the story of Steve trying to survive in a prison full of people, like we've seen before with Rorschach and Daredevil, like full of people that he put there. But what Steve has that these other guys don't is that ability to kind of humanize his enemy. Like they're not just villains, super villains. Like these are people who also happen to be super villains and criminals. So Steve's attempts to try to kind of get under the radar, survive this prison experience, while at the same time we've got Sharon Carter, who's assembled an all-woman team called the Daughters of Liberty, and they're doing everything in their power to either clear Steve or break his ass out. One way or the other, this is happening. They are going full force. You've got Sue Richards on the team. You've got some enigmatic character named Dryad, whose identity has not been revealed, but she is awesome. I can't wait to regale you guys with my left field conspiracy theory on Dryad. So this whole issue is right in the middle of this. Like, is he going to get cleared? Meanwhile, you've got Alexander Lukin is back with the Red Skull in tow, and they're manipulating news sources to kind of try to destroy what Captain America stands for. Like, this is a death unlike your typical comics death. They're ripping the icon apart rather than ripping the person apart. Like, if Steve Rogers is marred, who cares? But if Captain America becomes no longer redeemable, that kills Captain America, not just anybody that could pick up the shield and say, I'm Captain America. Like, it completely invalidates any notion of what Captain America stands for. So that's your central premise throughout this arc. I have been personally loving it. This happens to be a book that actually 2 of the 3 this week are books that I review on a regular basis. So with all that said, why don't we kick it over to Nick to start us off on a discussion on Captain America number 10?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with what you say. I think Coates has dealt a lot with legacy after the whole Nazi Cap thing. In the first arc, dealt a lot with him and his distrust of the public, how they viewed him after Nazi Cap and Stevel and all of that. And now they've kind of switched to a more internal view of him being in the prison and just kind of being confined like that and dealing with the consequences of that shift in dynamic for what Captain America means and what that legacy has been now after everything that's happened to him. So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there.
This Captain America series has been just killer. So good. A ton of Brubaker callbacks have been interspersed with just moments of really interesting character introspection that a lot of writers seem to gloss over in more Captain America browbeatings and blind patriotism. Frank Miller having Cap rescue a flag. Wait a minute, she's still in there. And he runs back into a burning building to save a flag. Or, so general Cap antics are pretty left to the wayside in this series in favor of just some really interesting, as I said, introspective storytelling that kind of helps show us who Cap is as much as what he does, or even more than what he does sometimes. His strength of character and sometimes lack thereof, nobody's perfect, can be seen from time to time. I loved in this issue him talking about, you might know this guy as I'm blanking on his name, Pile Driver, but he's Dr. Elliot so-and-so. They're more than super criminals to him. They're people. And he even says, I found out that Gorgon has a mother who's crying over him, hoping that he's okay. Nobody thinks of these supervillains as people. And it's pretty driven home outside of Cap's own introspection by Sue Richards' meeting with Pile Driver and him insisting that she use his real name and her blowing him off like a jerk. Like, yeah, whatever, Pile Driver. Oh man, that's really gotta hurt when you're trying to be treated as a person and someone's continuing to look at you as the label, which is the opposite of what Rogers is. They're talking the assassination of Rogers' character. They're trying to separate him from the symbol, and at the same time, men like Pile Driver can't be separated from the symbol. Can a supervillain reform? Which is really interesting. And it also makes me wonder if Pile Driver might be some kind of inside agent within the Myrmidon, which is Strucker's super prison, which is pretty close to the prison from Face Off, but full of supervillains, which is pretty sweet. The steel cage match with Strucker. How is that legal? What did you think of it, Matt?
Oh God, I can't say enough good about this comic. This is the Captain America comic. Let me clarify that I've been waiting for quite some time. It like you guys were saying, it takes some of the JJ, your eating's distracting me. I have to switch. It takes some of the ideas and plot threads from Brubaker. It touches on what would be the real world consequences, I think, of Secret Empire, and just weaves it together in this extremely introspective and relatively quiet look at not just who Steve Rogers is, but who and what Captain America is, what he means, because America means a lot of things to a lot of different people. And Cap, by design, is supposed to be represent the best of those ideals, and what, the highest ideals that this country should stand for, or is supposed to stand for, are supposed to aspire to. And him having to deal with the fallout of those notions being subverted and twisted, and doubt cast upon them by Secret Empire and by fake news, and the twisting in the public's perception of who he is and what he stands for. It's just nothing short of mind-blowing. I don't know if you guys read Ta-Nehisi Coates' first big foray into comics over in Black Panther with A Nation Under Our Feet, but it is not going to be for everyone, but it is full of these deep philosophical thoughts and discussions, and that really the dialectic of that is what drives the story, and then the action beats are secondary to that discussion and Socratic method of kind of going through what the story is about and what the conflicts are and who these characters are. So as Ta-Nehisi Coates has become more confident as a writer, he has become less wordy, and he's allowed the characters' actions and a relatively minimal amount of dialogue to carry those the same types of discussions and ideas and philosophical thoughts forward in ways that make for a more brisk and impactful read. I don't want to say visceral, because that makes it sound like it's an action movie all of a sudden, but I think basically what I'm trying to say is he's become a more confident comic book writer. And as much as I love what he's done in Black Panther up until this weird thing where they all went into space and started playing Star Wars, I kind of feel like this Captain America run speaks to everything that Coates is as a writer and what he believes and what he really what the pinnacle of his writing career is going to be is what we're reading right now. This is absolutely fantastic stuff. Adam Kubert, as ever, knocks it out of the park. The coloring is phenomenal and gorgeous, and damn it, I just wish it would ship regularly so I didn't have to wait quite as long between issues, but it's absolutely worth it. Cody, back over to you.
Yeah, so I mean, to kind of piggyback off of what you said a little bit, like I think one of the central thematic things that Coates is working with in this particular story, in this particular series, was one of the things that I had hoped he would. I'm familiar with his work from The Atlantic, some of his prose work before this, and kind of the ways that he approaches problematic terms and problematic situations. And what I see him doing very, very consciously is trying to disentangle nationalism from patriotism. And I think that the ways that he is doing that, the ways that he is having this retrospective Cap narrate this story, right? We don't know where Cap's going to end up. We assume that because he's telling the story that Cap will live, Steve will live. But we don't know in what state, who remains and what will be left of them, right? We don't have any idea of that. But what we do know is what Cap believes in. Like, that becomes central, that Cap believes in America where we're not fighting amongst ourselves, where we're trying to build bridges, not blow them up within our own country. Like, that focus on what it means to be a patriotic American versus what it means to be a nationalistic American is what really makes this entire run shine. That was what drew me to it from the announcement back in January was that last year? January of last year. I heard and immediately came running, and he has delivered on all counts. It's been a remarkable book. I was skeptical on Kubert's art to begin with. I just didn't know if it was as good a fit as Lionel Francis Yu in the arc before this. But his use of space on the page, the negative space to the actual his use of space for like the negative space to the actual panels is just remarkable. It's been breathtaking in this. The way he uses balance and counterbalance on the page has been absolutely fantastic. I'd like to kick it back to Nick, and I think Nick has some more he'd like to say. And then,
no, forgive me,
yeah.
I don't quite get the format yet, but yeah, I think Coates brings an understanding of certain politics and societal dynamics of America that I knew he would bring to the comic. And he already started bringing the Black Panther back when he first started writing. And going back to what Matt said, I think this is an improvement on what he's done with Black Panther. It's hard to compare the two, but Captain America has shown he's able to delve into that understanding of America and what it's going through right now and what Captain America means to that idea to so many different people. And this comic is just more of some of that stuff that shows his understanding and shows that he can bring that to his comics. It's really great stuff, and I've been excited since the announcement, like you were, Cody. So it's pretty great that he's following through with it.
And let me follow that up a little bit by saying he's not hitting us over the head with any of this stuff. It's all remarkably subtle. There's nothing ham-fisted about it. There's nothing, it's genuinely thought-provoking. And I just love the hell out of this book for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's got a lot of writing with the Atlantic that's kind of provoking. So people were skeptical of him coming into Captain America, and there's a lot of online talk about that. So it's really cool that, like you said, it's not ham-fisted. He's bringing a really subtle and, I think, well thought out take on Captain America.
Yeah, and it's so nuanced too. Like that, and that was, the big complaint particularly amongst the right and the conservatives, or however you want to phrase this group of people. But like, oh no, here comes this heavy SJW liberal come to destroy our icon of patriotism, nationalism, whatever word you want to insert into here. And I feel like what Coates has really done a great job of is showing both sides of the argument. You've got this mining town in the middle of nowhere that's their economy has collapsed after the retreat of Hydra. Hydra had propped them up. This is the white working male, middle America, struggling to find a job, trying to find their place in a country that is becoming more and more diverse, and that diversity is becoming more and more visible. And he doesn't shy away from that. He doesn't say, you're a villain because you want to be economically prosperous. Just that you have maybe been led by the nose along a path that you probably don't actually want to be on. So he's kind of showing this bigger picture of how all this stuff is happening. And I mean, this stuff is happening right now in the real world. And it's polarizing America. And I feel like what Coates is trying to do is kind of be like, look, y'all aren't really that far apart. This isn't really a lot of difference. You're just looking at it in different ways. I think it's been a powerful narrative. I can't wait to see how this wraps in a couple issues. It's probably in my top 3 current running series right now.
Yeah, I think every issue he's kind of showing that impact of a disconnect between society and its leaders, and what that lack of trust can show, and what each side is going through too. So it's really interesting stuff.
So the next book I want to get into, I don't imagine this is going to be a terribly long discussion. And I know, Nick didn't really have time. We hit Nick up 36 minutes before we went live and said, hey, you want to be on the show? And he's like, yes. So the next book we're going to cover is Metal Shark Bro. We actually got the first, 4 issues from Scout. This is written by Walter Ostley, who our press corps writer Mike Eakins pointed out used to be a DJ in Norfolk. So that's an interesting little tidbit for everybody. Also on the book is Bob France, Kevin Cuff, and Chaz Pangborn. Metal Shark Bro tells the story of
It's a shark who's a bro and he likes metal.
it's
Wears
a
a leather
shark who's a
jacket.
bro. A rock star, a allegedly heavy metal person who doesn't speak anything like any heavy metal person I've ever met in my life, falls overboard, gets eaten by a shark. A demon comes in, says, "Hey, that was Satan's soul. You stole him. Now I'm gonna turn you into a shark, bro, and you got to kill a bunch of people on my list and deliver their souls to me." And then all kinds of chaos ensues. There's fights with wizards and dragons and alternate realms and demons and ninja nuns. And I mean, it reads like it was written by a 10-year-old, but a 10-year-old with a shitload of confidence, right? Like, I have a story and I know what story I want to tell, and it's going to be fucking awesome. I can't wait to show it to you. I didn't hate this book. I know it was a stupid book. I mean, like, this is one of those things you pitch to the company and say, maybe they'll publish it. And then they did. So, I mean, go you, man. Live your best life. But it's enjoyable in the way that it is incredibly self-aware. Like, it knows what it's trying to do. It doesn't ever try to be pretentious or even pretend like there is a point to reading this. It's just, it owns it. It says, I'm a stupid piece of shit, and maybe you'll laugh. And I mean, that's it.
All right, I guess I'm talking about Metal Shark Bro now.
Please do.
Metal Shark Bro is a book about a metal shark who's also a bro. He needs to kill a bunch of people for Satan for reasons. He really just wants to be a shark. It's not the worst book I ever read. It's actually not even close to the worst book I ever read. It is surprisingly fun at points, and I'd say in the first 4 issues I laughed about 12 times, which is a pretty good ratio if you think about it. He kills people. Sometimes he eats the people. He doesn't really like eating people. He really wants to eat license plates. It's not a bad book. I thought it was pretty fun for what it was. I would probably read it to my 5-year-old if it didn't have a ton of satanic imagery and stuff in it. I probably still might. What did you think of it? What did you think of it, Matt?
Why I'd read it to my kids.
Yeah.
Come on, dude. This comic is absurd and ridiculous, and 13-year-old Matt would have loved it to death and thought it was the most brilliant thing ever. And it's like Cody was saying, it's utterly self-aware of what it is, and I can appreciate that. I appreciate the confidence the creators put into it. They know exactly what they're doing. Metal, shark, bro. It is what it is, and it's nothing more. I read the whole first issue. I couldn't get through the other 3 that we had on the drive, just because I couldn't do it. So I mean, it's the type of thing that you read and you pretty much. It's the comic book equivalent of a popcorn film. It's very silly. I feel like if you like Adventure Time, you could probably get into this. But yeah, it simply wasn't for me. And I just don't have that much else to say about it. So whoever's next, jump on in.
All right, yeah. So I mean, that's all we really need to say about Metal Shark Bro. Nick, did you have anything you wanted to add? I know you didn't read it.
No, I didn't read it, but just listening to the discussion, it sounds pretty wild, and I don't know where the satanic imagery comes in, but that's what interests me out of all of this. So maybe it's worth a read. If it's violent and gory, and I like that it's self-aware and it's not pretentious, if it knows what it is, then
yeah, exactly. It's a good enough time.
Yeah, definitely.
It's the AC/DC of Metal Shark Bro comics.
And I like AC/DC every now and then, so
they know all their songs down this name, and they know we love that one song they play 28 times in a row.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Perfect analogy. You're welcome.
It definitely does feel like fella, I already forgot his name, pitched a Deadpool comic and got shot down, and then just switched the main character around and called it a win.
Yeah, so Metal Shark Bro from Scout Comics. It's better than you would think. I think that's kind of our final summation there. It's not a bad book. It's just all the things that we said. So unless somebody has any burning desire to talk more about Metal Shark Bro, which I mean I do recommend, Nick, that you take a look, check it out for yourself. It's a very fast read. I think the whole 4 issues took me 25 minutes.
Yeah, I read it in
I read through and be like, yeah, all right.
I read all 90 pages in my lunch break.
Right. So if there's nothing else, then our final book this week is Hawkman number 12 from DC Comics. It was going to be Batman and the Outsiders, but a handful of miscommunications by yours truly meant that we're switching to Hawkman, which, as you all know, I've been a fan of. I've been lauding the praises of for a full year now. So Robert Venditti, Brian Hitch, you've got Andrew Curry, Norm Rappamund, and Scott Hanna on inks. Starkings and Comic Craft on the letters, and the absolutely wonderful Jeremiah Skipper on colors. Much love for Jeremiah Skipper's use of color in this book. I think it's been absolutely phenomenal. This is the conclusion of the Cataclysm arc. The Deathbringers are here. They've come for the great betrayer of Qatar Hall, now Carter Hall. Hawkman has lived many lives, cross time and space. This entire series up to this point has been a reorganization of what it is to be Hawkman. We've altered the timeline to make all of these various incarnations we've seen over the years fit into a single continuity, all building up towards a redemption for this original Deathbringer general who brought millions upon millions of lives to their end in sacrifice to some lord beyond the veil or wherever he's beyond the void. And now it's the Lord behind the void and goes off on his mission to kind of stop that. And he dies in the process and then is reincarnated, and thus we get the story of Hawkman.
Lord MacGuffin demands a sacrifice.
Lord MacGuffin demands a sacrifice, and he gets many a sacrifice. So now we've got the final showdown, last issue. Idam is the successor to the general of the Deathbringers, toe-to-toe with our current Carter Hall, who in the last issue managed to summon every past Hawkman. Plural of Hawkman is Hawkmans. I'm sorry. It is. That is a fact. Not Hawkmen.
Hawkman.
He gets all of his Hawkmans.
You know what got it right was the friendly or the Spider-Man Free Comic Book Day issue called that. They called it.
Yeah.
Shocker said Spider-Mans. And then he said, is that the plural? And then he's like, yeah, I think it is. And then he kept saying Spider-Mans. Finally, somebody understands.
Mm-hmm. So the Hawkmans are fighting the Deathbringer army. They're fighting the cataclysmic beasts, and they bring them down. They're winning. They stop the armies. Carter goes Savage Hawkman on Idam, beats the crap out of him, rips his wing off. Like, this is a no holds barred. You told me you can't die? Fine, then I'll break you. And just goes ape on him. Like, it's, what do you do? There are thousands of Hawkmans standing around. So the original incarnation, Qatar, has a nice heart-to-heart with Carter, and then gifts him the consciousness of all of the Hawkmans of all time. So, I mean, this is the opening of a new chapter. This is a Hawkman who's no longer confined to the present, but has the totality of all of his past inside of his consciousness. And that's good and bad, right? Like, every trauma he has ever experienced is now a part of his memory as well. And I imagine that in the months to come, we'll be dealing with that. This issue is the farewell to Brian Hitch, who was remarkable in this book from jump. Never late. This book shipped on time every single month for 12 months. And every issue had an immense attention to detail. Like, this was his finest work. I love Ultimates. This was Brian Hitch at his absolute best. So he'll be sorely missed. Sorry to see him go, but I'm looking forward to, where is Venditti going to take this now? Like, there's so many different options he can go. It's time for me to shut up. I know, I'm sorry. I love this book. I love this book so damn much. And it doesn't sell well. So if you're listening to this, go buy it. Go buy the trade. Keep this book alive because it is phenomenal work right now. How about Matt?
So the Hawkmen are flapping around in the sky. No.
Hawkman's.
Actually, hey, let's start by Cody. Keep your mic open. Let's start by talking about Brian Hitch's art a little bit. Who's replacing him in this book?
Man, I was afraid somebody was going to ask that, and I don't remember.
I don't remember. But it's somebody along the lines artistically of like Aaron Cooter or somebody like that. But yeah, whoever it is, I feel extremely bad for them because you've got to follow Brian motherfucking Hitch on a book that he was born to draw.
Yep.
I don't know if I necessarily am going to have to agree with you. It's the best thing he's ever done because Authority.
I still think his art got more attention.
I will say, hands down, this is the best thing he's drawn since Ultimates 2 wrapped up. Definitively. So it's in like the top 3 things he's ever done, which, considering the scope of his career, is pretty goddamn impressive. The man is just in a class of his own when it comes to giving his comics a 70 millimeter widescreen feel. And this was absolutely the canvas for him to be working on. So kudos to Brian Hitch. I really want to go back now that this whole 12-issue arc is wrapped and actually do the binge read on it and see how it all fits together, because I did have to fly through my reading of number 12 a little quickly, like literally 4 minutes before we started recording. So, but I felt like it was a very earned ending to this massive Hawkman redefining arc. And the solutions that Venditti deployed throughout the last few issues, from summoning the army of past Hawkmen to Carter realizing that he's never going to beat this army, so he beats the one guy that puts him in charge of the army. And, then he can just tell them to fuck off. That's excellent. Very, very smart, outside of the box thinking. I love the cliffhanger that it ended on. Like, everything feels resolved, but at the same time, we're opening this whole new door now. And this is the kind of book that feels big in the way that a superhero comic should. And I don't mean that, I definitely do not mean that in an event comics sense, but everything is just massive in scope. And the multiverse, time travel, space, everything, front to back. This is what I want in a superhero comic. It's just absolutely brilliant. I would like to see Venditti try to get a little bit more of a supporting cast going. I mean, my God, the 2 issues, what was it? I think 5 and 6 or 6 and 7 with the Atom were note perfect issues. Hell, bring him back. He's not doing anything. Let's see more of Madame Xanadu and whoever else he can think of, just to give Carter somebody more than just himself to talk to. But God, that's a pretty damn minor critique. So, I mean, buy this comic. Please do not let this comic die. It deserves to be read. And my hat's off to every creator involved with it. Nick, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's hard to complain too much about this one. It's a great book. It's been epic for a few issues now, and the fight with all the Hawkmans has been pretty solid. But it is a fan service series, it seems. I haven't read a lot of Hawkman coming into this series, and they've been really going into the lore of everything behind them. It's been, I still read it, but I haven't been quite as thrilled with it as some of the other people here. But this one was it was a nice finale to the epic arc. Lots of action, you know, dude ripping the wing off was great, and you know, bashing him in the head. That's what I want to see. It's some savage shit, you know. But anything else is cool enough. But I didn't follow the fan service as hard. Next issue will probably be a good jumping on point, because it seems like it's a pretty hard conclusion to this arc, and it's the future is bright for Hawkman type of thing. So that's cool. We got new creative talent coming in. The art was really great on this one. It was nothing really that brilliant, that stunning, or I've seen it. It's been a few issues now of them fighting, and it can kind of get repetitive after a while. But aside from that, that was kind of my only complaint after kind of binging the series coming into this. Outside of that, it was pretty good stuff. John?
So I thought Hawkman was just great. Hawkman number 12. I do agree with what Nick said, that the last few issues have been a lot of build-up and not a lot of payoff. But this issue has definitely brought it all home and made it just really interesting. I can definitely say that I want to see more of Kryptonian Hawkman, which it would be a real shame if this is the last time we ever see him. Just he cracks me up. Like, you know, look up in the sky, that's not a bird. And then he's like, I heard Kryptonians in a yellow sun can shoot lasers from their eyes. That I'd like to see. Oh, it's delightful. It's fun. But obviously the highlight of the issue is Edom getting the living hell beat out of him by Carter. You know, he says, you know, you might have said you were immortal, but you never mentioned a healing factor. And he, you know, he breaks his back, he rips his wing off. He literally makes him say, you know, call him general. He makes him submit, you know, concede defeat, which is not something, you know, you would think an immortal person would do. Delightful, and Brian Hitch was great as always. Does anyone else have anything else to say about Hawkman? Oh, I've been buying this this series since issue 1. If you haven't been, shame on you, the viewer. That is your fault. That's on you. Go buy this series
Immediately.
now.
The one viewer, you need to buy this series.
Ross. Ross and Trey,
Nice.
You aren't buying Hawkman. You guys are in big trouble. Maybe Andrew, but Andrew might have dropped us. And Andrew Jackson. He never comments on our videos anymore.
Well, yeah, so Hawkman 12, end of an era, opening a new chapter. I thought it was fantastic. Go buy this book. Buy it in trade. Do whatever you got to do to support this book. It's been fantastic. And that wraps up our spotlights. So why don't we kick it over to Matt for our usual weekly, what have you been reading? And what are you looking forward to this week?
So, same as last week, I've been getting caught up on Christopher Priest's Deathstroke. So I talked about how awesome that was last week. So I thought I'd throw a quick spotlight on a free comic book day issue that I got from Ahoy Comics, starring Dragonfly and Dragonfly Man of the Wrong Earth.
I got that one too. I haven't read it yet.
This comic is so fun. The concept is that you've got basically Batman 66 and Batman from The Dark Knight Returns, and they switch worlds. And yeah, wackiness ensues. Oh, super great fun comic from Tom Pyre. I'm going to have to get the trade of it. I really want to read more of this. What I'm looking forward to, I actually want to give a quick shout out to American Carnage from Vertigo. And I really want to highlight this one because we tend to give the author Brian Hill a little bit of a hard time, or we have anyway in the past, for some of his work that we just perhaps did not like as much because maybe it wasn't very good and maybe we were being
Well, we blew off his big number 1 this week to read number 12.
So here's
in
the
his
thing.
defense, like Batman and the Signal was great. I thought he did good on that.
Yeah,
And
like, he's
That
just-
was
I
Snyder.
reviewed the first issue of American Carnage, and it was really amazing.
yeah, American
Batman and the
Carnage-
Signal was Snyder.
I think he co-wrote with him.
I think he did. But he did do that Outsiders arc on Detective that was 5 issues and should have been 3.
It was
but
awful.
anyway, dude's inconsistent, but American Carnage is awesome. It has to do with an FBI agent who is black but can pass for white, and he gets put into undercover into a far right wing neo-Nazi alt-right political organization, and it's just extremely well done. The great Leandro Fernandez is on art, so it's got a little bit of that Eduardo Rizzo / 100 Bullets feel to it. Artistically, I absolutely love this book. I want to see Brian Hill's career take more of this type of trajectory. And I'm fearful that since it doesn't seem like the new Vertigo books are getting a lot of traction, that this book is doomed sooner rather than later, which would be very unfortunate because it's extremely well crafted, very, very tightly crafted, written and plotted story. So
I will say that Brian Hill is a hell of a nice guy, and I wish him all the best. I realized I was kind of ragging on him, and that's not my intent. He's a
no, not at all.
He's
Not
a
at
great
all.
writer. I think he's actually trying to shift away from comics.
Oh, really?
From what I've put
That's
together on
interesting.
Twitter, he helped out with Titans writing from DC Universe,
Mhm.
and I think he's wanting to shift more towards writing other things outside of comics. I don't know if his career is necessarily ending in comics, but he may be getting less and less work on that side of writing.
Possibly.
You know,
Couple
good
quick
for him.
notes.
He should go with it.
Batman and the Signal was co-written by newcomer Tony Patrick, not Brian Hill.
My
And yeah, you had me at Edward Rizzo art. Like, if it looks anything like 100 Bullets, you know, I'm gonna read it. I had
Yeah.
planned on reading this book eventually. I'm glad to hear that it is as good as it's been heralded. And a book not doing well has never stopped Vertigo from publishing a book.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that.
They will publish a book that doesn't do well, and they will ride it all the way to the end. So I mean, at least we have that in their corner.
Yeah. So that's me for this week. Nick, how about you? What have you been reading? What are you looking forward to?
Well, I guess as a free spotlight, I want to talk about more what Saladin Ahmed's doing with Miles Morales and the Magnificent Miss Marvel. He's killing 2 titles at once. They keep giving him work, and he's knocking seemingly every issue out of the ballpark. It's just great stuff all around. But aside from that, this week was the big one from Detective Comics, 1003, Identity of the Arkham Knight. That was what had everybody talking. We had multiple guesses. We didn't know if they were going to go the video game route and get Jason Todd back, or I think some people here thought it'd be Heretic, the clone.
And none of them mattered because they made it some random stupid jerk person. I'm so
I
mad.
thought it was cool. Like I'm cool. It was shocking. I'm definitely cool with a new villain. She's got a cool backstory so far. It's a woman. I think it's overdue. I think I mentioned in my review that it was long overdue for something like that. I think it's also ties into what they're doing after Detective Comics 1000. That was a heavily male-driven issue, and you've got, I think they're coming in with something a little bit more modern than this female, and going to give a new villain. That's pretty cool. But looking forward to is still coming into Spawn 300. Todd McFarlane is like coming in hot with that one. Every issue is just getting better and better. And Jason Sean Alexander's artwork is almost up there with Todd McFarlane's original stuff back when he first started Spawn. It's just iconic, and I think he's killing it right now. So 300 is going to be something to watch out for. Something that any fan, anybody looking in to get into Spawn is gonna want to watch for that one. And John, I guess you're next.
Yeah. One further final note on Detective's big reveal this week. Why would Damien care when they took their mask off and said, "Are you gonna follow me now?" Are they banking on pure "I'm a hot blonde chick and you're a 19-year-old boy"?
He really didn't even show an emotion. That was kind
Yeah.
of it was kind of a disappointment from last issue when she pulls it off and that's the big reveal. And then this issue he says, "Well, I don't even know who you are."
Yeah, right. No stranger. That doesn't change my mind.
Yeah.
As for
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a dumb
I think
reveal.
it was like the opposite of what the video games did too. It was somebody that you knew all along. It was Jason Todd, this big thing, and I think they wanted to. It seems like they wanted to do something totally different with that and say, now this Arkham Knight pulls the helmet off and you have no idea who it is. And that's kind of what I got from it.
But as for what I've been reading, I've been catching up on Dead Man Logan last week. Sorry, I'm talking very out of sync. Dead Man Logan last week was so good, it drove me to go back and read Old Man Logan, starting from his reintroduction or his introduction into Marvel 616 in his 5-issue Secret Wars miniseries, and then moving on to his ongoing series, which started in 2015 or so, and it's 50 issues. So I am 11 issues into that so far, and it's been really good. I'm liking it a whole lot. Additionally to that, for Free Comic Book Day, my LCS does half off back issues, and I picked up 20 or so issues of late 80s Adventures of Superman written by Marv Wolfman with art by Jerry Ordway. It's a decent run. Not a lot of memorable stuff happens. There's a gang war and a forgettable cabal of villains. It wasn't a big deal. I was shocked how many people, when I posted pictures from it, said it was their favorite run of Superman ever. Like 4 or 5 different people said, "This is my Superman," and I'm like, "Wow, your Superman's super duper boring." As for what I'm looking forward to this week, there are 2 Conan the Barbarian comics and 3 War of the Realms books this week. I look forward to all of them. Also, Batman Who Laughs. Batman Who Laughs has been real good, and I heard this next issue is real good as well. I did not read our advance copy because I am that excited about it that I wanted to read it in print. Usually that is reserved for books like The Green Lantern and Criminal, where I don't want to have my first reaction be to a digital comic, so I hold out for the print copy on Wednesday. What about you, Cody?
So this past week, I haven't been able to read a whole lot of stuff other than the stuff that I'm normally reviewing because I had a real heavy, hectic week. I also finally had a chance to go watch Avengers Endgame. And I would call that a solid B+ movie with several really A+ moments. So there's that. I've also continued my out of order binge of Game of Thrones. So I went back, I watched season 7, and then I watched seasons 4 through 6. Now I'm watching season 2. And it's been really fun to kind of look and see, where these characters were at different points in their lives out of order. Because it really does kind of force you to really think about where they have gone, where they have come, and where they have ended up in this final season.
You're
this
doing a
fan
Slaughterhouse
service
5
season.
watch through.
I am doing a Slaughterhouse 5 watch through. So hopefully soon. I know not everybody that is doing this show watches Game of Thrones, but I know many of us do, or many of us at least yeah, I know Nick does. I know Derbs is watching it, so maybe we can get Derbs on here. Ross, Matt, are you watching?
No, I'm like
Matt,
5 seasons behind.
so you don't even matter anymore. You're completely irrelevant, and everything has already been spoiled for you anyway.
Yeah.
I finished season 2 a while back.
But I think we have enough of us, as we approach the end of what I really feel like is a pop culture phenomenon. We will try to do some kind of special attention to Game of Thrones. And now that I've seen Endgame, I was the last one of us to see it. We will do some coverage on Endgame in the near future. As for this week, I'd like to take just a moment to try to keep myself together long enough to talk about Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 6. I don't want to give away anything that's actually in the book, but this needs to be a book that you read this week. Even if you're not a Spider-Man fan or a Marvel fan, like this is a book that encapsulates exactly the power that comic books can have. Like the strength of narrative, the strength of holding a mirror up to the real world, the ability to put yourself into a comic and also let a comic put itself into you. That sounded wrong. That's not how I meant that at all. Like this was a really powerful issue. I highly recommend, like if you didn't get a copy, go get one. Beg, borrow, steal, read this book. It ruined me for the first couple hours of my morning, but I was graced with the ability to actually talk to Tom Taylor a little bit about this issue and our personal experiences with the story that was involved, which really helped me kind of, I don't know, cope with a very powerful story. But definitely don't cheat yourself. Check this book out. I will say it. I mean, everybody knows I'm not the biggest Spider-Man fan in the world, but I've read a lot of Spider-Man. This is the best art and writing I've read on a Spider-Man book to date. I know it's a bold statement, but in my heart of hearts, I believe that this issue was the pinnacle of this. This is something we'll talk about for years. Check it out. Yeah, I did it. I didn't cry.
And I think you get that emotion in the review that's come out too. I don't know how much we talk about what we do here at Comic Watch, but that review that you wrote, Cody, was great, and I think it did it justice, and it goes towards what you're saying, and that people just really should check it out for themselves.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Yeah, that review went live today. I tried to make a special point. That was the first thing I did this morning after I dropped my daughter off at school. I sat down, I read it. Cried for about 30 minutes, and then I wrote it. So, yeah. So you can check that out at www.comic-watch.com. Does anybody have any parting shots before I do the ending spiel about?
Yeah, I'd like to thank
JJ's
Nick
driving
for being with us this week.
As always, thanks for
having
listening.
me.
I realized it was almost 7 and I needed to be hurrying home, so I'm driving and podcasting, which is not a thing that you should do.
I actually thought maybe those 4 beers had caught up with you and you had to run for some gentleman's time.
That isn't real beer though. It was Budweiser.
Still 48 ounces of liquid coursing.
I could drink like unlimited Budweisers, and I peed before we started.
Be safe, JJ. We do not condone drinking and driving on this show. Just want to put that out there.
That was like 2 hours ago.
I'm just saying, we don't condone drinking and driving on this show. This is kids at home.
No.
Don't try this.
I drank some coffee too. I'm fine.
So yeah.
Also, it was Budweiser.
Shut up. You can find us at www.comic-watch.com. You can follow us on Twitter at CWatchersShow. You can find us on Facebook at The Comic Watchers Show, Comic Watch. And you can also find us on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, and probably 2 or 3 other places soon, the Podbean and many other various
Someday I'll get Podbean
podcast spots. And that is all we have for our 30th show. Thank you very much, Nick, for joining us today. Brian, hurry back. Derbs, we love you. Bye.
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 Bye.